Folks, hello and welcome to Tavern Chat. I'm your host, Eric Tenkar, your bartender in the OSR, your main proprietor at the Tenkar's Tavern blog. And we have another Kyle Brink interview that's up, and it's a sizable one. It comes in at just over an hour. It's Bob's RPG Radio, who comes in at just under 2,000 subscribers. And there's an interesting first question and the interesting first answer. So I think we're gonna take a peek at that and or listen to it and comment on it because I think it's very revealing, this whole fiasco. So this is Bob's first question.
Why choose my YouTube channel for one of these few discussions rather than a channel like D&D Shorts with much higher viewership, much more dedicated coverage of the OGL situation?
And that's a very fair question. Why are you doing all of these channels, all of these YouTube channels that have under 2,000 subscribers? This is actually the largest channel, or one of the largest, aside from Ginny D. And they had to, I think that was a full on the sword thing. They kind of felt they had to address Ginny, but they weren't going to go to D&D Shorts, and they weren't going to go to anybody that was, I think, really truly critical of the situation. And Kyle explains why.
In particular, we wanted a variety, but we also didn't want to do 65 interviews.
And of course, who wants to do 65 interviews? But
seems like that's what they're doing.
It does. However, folks are like, well, you should have reached out. No. All these interviews, from what I'm going to gather and for what I can see, like Bob was reached out to by Wizards of the Coast, by their influencers segment or whatever inside Wizards. The same day that they released the they released the SRD into the Creative Commons, they reached out to Bob and said, hey, you want to do an interview with Kyle? So they wanted ground balls. They didn't want anything that was going to be something they couldn't predict. And and you're going to hear, I think Kyle was not too pleased with the Three Black Halflings interview, but we'll get to that in a second.
So we had to pick a handful, right? And we picked some with great reach. We picked some with smaller reach, but like
many with smaller reach. Again, I don't know. I would consider my own channel to have a small reach. During the OGL fiasco, man, my reach was significant. But I would say, in the grand scheme of things, it's a small reach. Now, out of curiosity, all right, so I don't know exactly when this video went up today. It's got 842 views. I would think Kyle Brink, being getting, all right, my vidIQ is saying it's getting 42 views per hour. Well, that's impossible. Let's went up overnight, which would mean that it's really not getting viewed. So this by going to these small channels, these small YouTubers or influencers, you can say you're doing interviews, but you're really not reaching too many people. And is that the point? I don't know.
Really focused content like yours. We picked some that had been critical of us, like I just did one with Three Black Halflings, and they had some some criticism for me, of course, as you might imagine.
As you might imagine. That was the first one that came out. The first one we saw, I thought they did a very good job. I mean, honestly, their questions and their follow-up questions were good. And Kyle did the corporate tap dance of I shall not answer.
Imagine, and some with who've been kinder, and so we wanted to.
And some who've been kinder. We wanted to find people who would give us the questions ahead of time and weren't going to ask anything really all that difficult because it's a PR tour that Kyle is doing.
Range, people who have been negative, neutral, positive, large reach, smaller reach, but focused. The main driver, though, is people who we felt we could have a conversation with.
Oh, a conversation with. And again, they don't want the tough questions, right? It's a conversation. So we can get our story out. How we were taught. No, there's a little peek behind the camera here. As a rookie in the academy, we were taught to always paint a picture. All right, because no matter what the incident is, how you present it will be how it is shown. So when you are testifying in a court of law, you are essentially painting a picture, and you can have, you can be working from the same still life and have the same paints and brushes as the person next to you, but you're going to paint different pictures, right? Because different things are important to you. Well, there's different things that are important to Kyle and Wizards of the Coast to get out as compared to the rest of us who want honest to God answers.
Because that's what I wanted this to be. And that's also why I wanted to talk to creators before journalists, because I want
creators before journalists. Now, I would assume that means the channels that he's been aiming for are people that generally aren't going to ask those tough questions, or at least he wouldn't expect the tough questions. I want to talk to creators. We just want to talk gaming. We don't want to talk to the people who are going to say, dude, what the fuck were you thinking? And maybe when we say you, we don't mean you. We mean Wizards of the Coast. Because, corporations are people, according to the Supreme Court. What the fuck were you thinking with OGL 1.1? Because even if it wasn't meant to go out into the wild, and it was, but we'll take that on its face value that wasn't meant to go out. Why was it even in existence in the first place? I'd love to see that question be accurately answered. I don't expect it to, but I'd love to see it.
Want to have a conversation more than an interrogation. I mean, that doesn't.
And again, it means I don't want to be asked the tough questions. I'm not ready for them. I'm not prepared. You're not Kyle.
He said it himself.
You said it yourself. You want to have a conversation. You don't want an interrogation. Now, a conversation is something that Kyle can steer and control. An interrogation, and I wouldn't call it an interrogation. I would call it an interview. An interview, the direction of the conversation is largely steered by the interviewer, not the interviewee. But Kyle is not looking to be, again, Kyle is admitting he wants to get their story out understandable, but that's not what the community necessarily wants or needs. So, Bob, your first question was spot on. Kyle, your answer is surprisingly truthful.
I mean, I won't answer your questions. Of course, I will answer your questions, but I'm hoping it'll be an exchange of information, because I'm also hoping to learn.
An exchange of information. I'm hoping to learn. You're hoping to learn. So I will answer. I'm going to answer questions. I don't think I'm not going to answer questions, but I'm looking for it to be an exchange of information. Again, it's so Kyle can control where the conversation goes. All right? This isn't a surprise. I'm just surprised that he's admitting it. This is why I want to go. We want conversations. We don't want interrogations. And again, it's not an interrogation. It would be an interview. And if you came on my channel, Kyle, honestly, you would have tough questions. You would have tough questions and tough follow-ups between myself and Bad Mike, because we have prior experience in conducting this stuff. But it won't be antagonistic. It gets antagonistic when we feel like we're being lied to and gaslit. That's when it gets antagonistic. Now, I don't expect Kyle to come on this channel. I don't expect Wizards of the Coast to reach out to me. That's for sure. I don't expect them to go on the D&D Shorts, because if Kyle looked at D&D Shorts, Kyle will be going, so, well, where did you get all your information from? Who's your inside source? I can't tell you. I mean, that's going to go nowhere. And honestly, D&D Shorts did us a great service by getting the leaks out as he got them. So again, God bless a lot of these players that are in the community that kept on top of this when it was important.
From this conversation.
Yeah. And then I guess with that in mind, so I suppose that you personally were probably not the person picking these creators. Maybe you had some insight to it. But I do want to just follow up and say, like, we had our guy Will out there on D&D Shorts who his videos were getting like hundreds of thousands of views on this. He was very critical.
He was extremely critical, and he had inside sources. So here's the issue too. If Kyle went on D&D Shorts be like, well, my information is, my sources say, and then either Kyle lies and gaslights, or Kyle goes, I can't discuss that, which is a confirmation, or he goes, well, all right, I give you that. There's no positive for Wizards of the Coast to go on D&D Shorts.
So was he somebody who wasn't asked about this?
I don't know whether he was asked.
If he was asked, he would have said yes. Any of us would have. So, yeah, you don't know who was asked. I think everybody's channel that you're going to, Kyle, was asked, and everyone's channel that you're not going to wasn't asked. I don't think that's a hard equation to figure out. That's basic math. Basic math.
I personally would have been uncomfortable speaking to him because of the approach he took to it. It really seemed really extreme.
It didn't. I think so, Kyle. It seemed extreme because you were on the other side, and I understand. You were, in some ways, the target of a lot of the community's angst and anger, and D&D Shorts was kind of like a focused way to express that angst and anger and confusion. So I actually think he would have done a very good job interviewing, and it would have been a lighter interview than you would have expected, honestly. But you would have been uncomfortable because you would have known every time that you lied and gaslit that he would have known the truth. Allegedly. I mean, that's assuming that, as was the Coast's current spokesperson, you're avoiding speaking the truth.
Not just because I disagreed with what he was saying, which I did from time to time, and agreed with what he said, which I also did from time to time. But the emotional tone of it felt like a conversation with him would be more about. It would be a minefield. It would be one that I would feel like he was trying to take advantage of to raise the viewership. All
right. So now this is always the excuse, right? And I've seen this directed. Tenkar does controversial videos to raise his viewership, or you're looking to make money off this. I can tell you right now, the amount of money I make off an average day on YouTube before the OGL was probably about $3 or $4. Now it's about 5 or 6. I'm not in it for the money. We don't have sponsorships. I could. I don't do it. So we're not doing it for the money. Okay, we're not doing it for the viewership. We're doing it because it's a legitimate story. So I don't see D&D Shorts going into it as shock jockery, trying to raise the viewership, as Kyle is alleging. But that is often the point of view of the individuals that are caught up on the other side of this. Oh, well, you're only interested in this because it's raising your viewership. That's
right. That's the best way to punch holes in somebody's
right. Well, right. There's no. You're making this a story. No. The story is the story. Nobody has to make the story. If anybody made the story, Wizards of the Coast did with their own ineptitude at putting out or trying to squash the old LGL and introduce a new one. Nobody would ever make up that story. Nobody could ever conceive of that story ahead of time. That was all Wizards of the Coast. The rest of us report on it.
It just, I didn't feel like it would be a reasonable conversation, and I wanted to have a reasonable conversation.
Yeah, I think Will would agree that his videos are intentionally sensational. So maybe that's something you wanted to avoid. I can understand that. Okay.
So again, I will say, Bob at Bob's RPG Radio, good first question. And Kyle, a much more honest question or answer, I should say, than I think any of us expected. So I will leave a link to Bob's channel in the show notes, so you can go and watch the rest of this interview. But yeah, this is the part that I thought was like, wow. Spot on. And the first question right at the beginning. So thank you for not wasting my audience's time, Kyle. I really do appreciate it. Folks, on that note, we'll have some next live stream is Wednesday. I believe we're having Courtney Campbell on. Ooh, we're going to be having special guests for the next month or so, at least. I'm actually having to keep a calendar. Sorry, Kyle, we don't have room for you. Look at that. An overlook. Have your people reach out to my people, and we'll see if we can find you time in like April or May. Folks, on that note, be safe, be well, God bless, roll those dice, roll them well. I will be back again tomorrow. Thank you all.